All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Bills Guys vidcast presented by Buffalo Fanatics. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills Guys, and you can find us on Twitter at the Bills Guys. So, as we do every show, Dave, we want to start things off on a positive note. The countdown to football. We are 64 days away from the Buffalo Bills returning in that preseason game against the Baltimore Ravens. How you feeling?
I feel good. We got again blessed today with a Josh Allen meeting the media, so we got a little flavor there. PGA Tour was back today. It's pretty exciting. PS5 revealed today. So it's like today was a good day, man. You got a lot of stuff going on, and then you have obviously the football stuff. So it's great.
Sports was back today. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but there was professional athletes on a course playing sports for money, an actual competition, not celebrities, real money. The PGA Tour returned today. So that was fun to watch. You had F-bombs. You had people waving at fake fans. So some sports are back. The other sports got to get their act together and get back here, or else we're going to start to really lose it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at least from what I'm seeing, MLB, NHL, NBA, it's like no one can get their house in order. You know, honestly, like the COVID thing sucks, right? We've talked about it a lot, but like timing wise for the NFL, it kind of worked out for them, honestly, because they don't have to deal with all this like as much as the other leagues do. So these other leagues, especially the MLB, man, seems like they can't figure it out, and it's a shame.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to start today's show. We're going to start with the topic that we actually have listed on the title page on YouTube and Facebook and stuff, and we're going to talk a little bit about Tremaine Edmunds today. Before I preface our conversation on Tremaine Edmunds, what's up, Sam? How you doing? Sorry, this is what I get for trying to do two things at once. I want to start this off by saying, Dave, before we were a vidcast, we were a podcast, or that old school technology where you couldn't see our face. I don't know. Are those things still around, podcasts?
I think so. Everybody has one now. Yep.
All right. So before we were a vidcast, we were a podcast, and we've been around since last January. So we were here last off season, and we've talked the last couple of weeks. We've praised Josh Allen and kind of gotten a little bit upset with ESPN for sort of disrespecting him and dissing him and not wanting to have an intelligent conversation. We, Pierre and a couple other people, Fanatics, ourselves included, have been having conversations about how we think legitimately Josh Allen could have an MVP type of season. A lot of the conversations we've been having the couple of weeks could be considered homerish. It could be considered sort of like wishful thinking. But I'm here to say that we've been here for a year and a half, and I've had enough people blow up my Twitter mentions to know that I can't be that big of a homer. I mean, we got in pretty hot water about a month and a half, 2 months ago when I stated at least that I think the Bills are only going to win 9 games this year, but it'll be enough to win the division, and we're still going to be really good. But still, people were blowing up my mentions like 9 wins. How dare you? So before we start this conversation, I don't want people to think that we're homers and we're having this conversation because, we're Bills fans. I think we're having this conversation because the Bills are actually giving us something to be hopeful about. This is the first offseason since what? Drew Bledsoe was our quarterback, that we could legitimately look at our roster and be like, oh my God, like the expectations are sky high. I can envision us winning a playoff game. I can envision us winning the division. It's wishful thinking would be thinking Chan Gailey could get you there. Wishful thinking would be thinking Dick Duran could get you there. I think the thoughts that we're having are legitimate, and it's just straight up fun to talk about in the offseason. I don't know. What about yourself?
Yeah, it's fun to talk about. And I think that there's reason for optimism, right? I mean, this isn't something where we kind of like the 2017 season where Tyrod was here and we kind of like, I don't want to say fluked our way into the playoffs, but like in a way we kind of did. There was no expectations that we were going to make the playoffs that year. At least I didn't. And in the 2 years since Josh Allen's been the quarterback, we've seen a shift in the progression in the team from the front office on down to the players on the field, right? Got the salary cap in order. We got the front office personnel with Bean and his staff in order. We got the coaching staff in order. We've drafted well. We brought in the right kind of guys. Everything has kind of lined up for the Bills on and sort of off the field from a, people in the building and play on the field to lead you to believe that they're on the upswing. Now, yes, I mean, I would say we do bring a blend of kind of like optimism and realism here. So like, is it wishful thinking? No, I think it's the next logical step in sort of this journey if we expect the Bills to continue this progression that we think they're on right now with the right people in place. So I think that it's fair to have the conversation, right? Like, we may come up short, we may not, but like it's at least fair to have the conversation. I don't think it's outlandish to have the conversation.
Yeah, we got Sheldon Cole chiming in. Tremaine Edmunds has the potential to be a really elite linebacker. And that's the conversation, Sheldon, and the folks watching that we're going to start off with today, because the question of the day, the question that's going to lead off our show today is, does Tremaine Edmunds have defensive player of the year potential? Could he be a defensive player of the year candidate? And I want to ask you a couple of questions, Dave, and I think you are qualified to answer these questions before we get started in this conversation before we get started in this conversation today. Apologize, tripping all over my words today. Last year, the Buffalo Bills had a player entering his third season who, during that third season, turned the corner and became, one could say, one of the faces of our franchise and one of the most respected defenders in the National Football League. Is that correct, Dave?
Absolutely correct.
And what is that player's name?
Tre'Davious White.
Tre'Davious White. Very good. So now the Buffalo Bills have another first-round draft pick, another player going into his third year, a guy who racked up 121 tackles in his first year as a 20-year-old rookie with 2 sacks and 2 interceptions, a guy who in his second year had 115 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 interception, who now, just like Trey White last year, is going into his third year. And what is the name of that player, Dave?
That's none other than the guy we just mentioned, Tremaine Edmunds, in
Very
the middle
good.
of that defense.
Tremaine Edmunds. This is a guy who is 22 years old, has already racked up 2 100-plus tackle seasons, is going into his third year and ready to turn the corner just like Trey White did. You could say he probably has the best defensive line he's ever had in front of him, which the Bills have sort of reassembled over this offseason. And with Lorenzo Alexander gone, he could possibly be tasked with more pass rushing duties, something that could get him even more on the box score and on the stat sheet. I have another question for you, Dave. Do you know the last middle linebacker to win the Defensive Player of the Year award in the National Football League?
I do, because I actually did a little research myself.
Look at that.
Before the show, and it was none other than Mr. Luke Kuechly in 2013.
And I have another question for you. Luke Kuechly, the last middle linebacker to win Defensive Player of the Year, who was his defensive coordinator?
His defensive coordinator was our current head coach, Sean McDermott.
Ooh.
I've got to take this back even a little bit further, though.
Okay.
For you, because
hit me with it.
I actually thought that this was also interesting. Do you know who the last middle linebacker before Luke Kuechly was to win the Defensive Player of the Year?
Yes, because I also did my research for the show. Right? Brian Urlacher.
Yes, it was. And Brian Urlacher's defensive coordinator in 2005 for the Chicago Bears was Ron Rivera. So there you go.
Ooh,
tracking it all the way back.
Look at this. We're coming full circle here, folks. We are connecting all the dots and talking about how Tremaine Edmunds can become I don't think I've heard one podcast. I don't think I've seen one tweet. Like, it just struck me the other day. And maybe it is the homer in me, maybe not. But it just struck me the other day. Like, why is no one having this conversation? Why is no one legitimately talking about how this player could possibly be a guy who comes in and fills up the stat sheet? Trey White was a fringe Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He had the unfortunate, I think, it was just unfortunate that a guy like TJ Watt blew up the stat sheet with sacks. A guy like Stephon Gilmore at the same position got a ton of more respect and a ton of more pub. But Trey White was top 5, top 10 defensive player in the National Football League this year. So if Tremaine Edmunds can do that, I think he's going to play it at a position where statistically he's going to put up numbers that might get him more in the conversation. And he's also, I think, no offense to Trey White, he's in a position to make the plays to make himself the defensive player of the year. Because Trey White's a very good player, but guess what? Trey White can only make a play if the ball is thrown at him. We're going to get to that conversation for Greg in a second, but
I saw that comment. Let's just throw it up there.
Really quick. Trey White, you have to throw the ball at Trey White for him to have to make a play. No cornerback wins defensive player of the year because people are afraid to throw the ball at him. You got to throw the ball at him for him to put up numbers, for him to look like a defensive player of the year candidate. Tremaine Edmunds is literally involved in every play. He is in the middle of our defense. He runs sideline to sideline. If he turns the corner in year 3, like Trey White did, I think he's in a perfect position to be a defensive player of the year candidate.
He is. Now let's talk about maybe some of the reasons why he hasn't been talked about so much in this vein yet, right? There's for one, he's still a very young player. He's not the most outspoken guy, or hasn't been yet to this point in his career, right? So he's not a guy that's going to get a lot of like national attention from that standpoint, because he's not demonstrative on the field, and he hasn't really been demonstrative off the field for any reason, as far as like endorsements, whatever. Second, for whatever it's worth, he does play in a small market, right? He plays on the Bills. So for that reason, he's probably not going to get the attention that some other guys may get at his same position, I might add. And thirdly, honestly, we've talked about this before. Linebackers in today's NFL are kind of like a specialty position nowadays, right? They're not that 3-down, Tremaine Edmunds is, but like we don't really see too many of those 3-down, like stocky, like middle linebacker types that would rack up tackles year in and year out, like we used to see in the past. A Patrick Willis type, a Brian Urlacher type, those types, right? Now he does still rack them up, and Bobby Wagner, great comment there from D Crystal. Like when guys like Bobby Wagner aren't like in conversation for defensive player of the year, and when he was in his prime, it's going to be tough for Tremaine Edmunds to do that. And I just think in general, it's going to be tough for a middle linebacker in today's NFL to do that. Now, you do make some good points, because he can stuff the stat sheet, tackles for loss, maybe throw in a few more sacks this year. He's had a couple interceptions in his career already, and he is only 22 entering this season. So there are a lot of arrows pointing up for him, even if he's not, defensive player of the year material for the NFL. He's certainly defensive player, of the AFC, or at least the division in our team. So I think that he's got everything you want, and the ceiling's sky high. I mean, I think, not to take your comment, but you made a very interesting comparison to him when we were on our podcast. Do you want to tell the people who you thought he could mirror his career after?
Oh, I honestly don't remember. It's peak off season for me right now. But Greg had a good comment. Like, we'll get back to that in a second. But Greg has a good comment. The media narrative momentum. I think 100+ tackles is a given for Tremaine Edmunds. I think he's going to get there. But, the last couple of years, it was 2 sacks and then 1 sack. It was, or 1.5 sack. It was 2 interceptions, 1 interception. What if this year he can go 5-5 or 5-4? Like if he can force turnovers, if he can get sacks, maybe rush the passer a little bit more because Lorenzo's gone, drop back a little bit more because there's a better defensive line. They can stuff the run better. All of these things. If he can drop back more and rove more, he can make these plays that Greg is talking about. That's I think, could get him that national media attention like Tre'Davious White was getting when he was intercepting passes. But
you remember that?
Who was the player I compared to him? Oh,
you compared him to Ray Lewis, but we'll come back to that in a second. But you remember the play in his rookie year?
No, I remember now. I didn't compare him to Ray Lewis. We'll get back to that, but you can go back to the play.
So if you remember, it was his rookie year. It was against the Dolphins late in the season. He made that interception, and it was a big play. He took it back. Can't remember exactly if he took it back for a touchdown. I don't think he did. But if he does something like that, to Greg's point, where he makes a play like that early in the season, where it's like a game-changing play, maybe against a top opponent in a game that matters, that could get him on the map there. For that. And you're right. You probably didn't compare him exactly to Ray Lewis. I think it was like career trajectory.
Thank you. That's the word I was going to use, was trajectory. But Scott Blakely with a great comment. He says, I would be pleased if he's recognized for a Pro Bowl. MVP
Which
is such a stress unless we go to the Super Bowl and provide national recognition. I mean, it's how many times do we see it? Like a Bills player we think deserves to even be in the Pro Bowl, and they can't even get into the Pro Bowl. So
he did make it last year. He did make the Pro Bowl last year, as in his second year at age 21. So
he wasn't straight up voted in, though, right? He had to be.
No, he was an alternate. No, he was an alternate. But Ray Lewis made the Pro Bowl his second year, so he didn't make it his first year. It's just throw that out there. But yeah, I mean, look, he did make the Pro Bowl last year, even though it was an alternate. He did make it, so he has some. There is some recognizability there for him amongst his peers and amongst those people making those choices. So,
yeah, Tom with a great comment. He said for him to win, he's going to need to do something special, lead the league of tackles, a few picks or a bunch of sacks. Then he gets that national attention. I think Davion builds off that point by saying he's definitely going to take more chances this year because he's more comfortable. So, again, third year in a system, all of those things. So, getting back to the trajectory thing, one of my hot takes last preseason, when we were talking on this podcast way back last offseason, was that I think that in a lot of ways, Tremaine Edmunds' career trajectory could mirror that of a Ray Lewis because he's so young. I mean, this guy's going to enter the next season at 22 years old. He played his first season at 20. He played his second season at 21. By the time he's 30 years old, he's going to have as many accrued seasons as some guys have in their whole career, 10 seasons. I mean, his youth, if he can put up these numbers year after year after year until he's 33, that's 13 years worth of statistics. And I did a little bit of math here. I mean, Urlacher for his career had 1,037 tackles in 13 seasons. Tremaine Edmunds is going to be 300 or so tackles above that, 200 or so tackles above that, if he keeps the pace he's on for his first 2 years until he's 33 years old, which I can see him doing. Ray Lewis has just over 1,500 career tackles in 17 seasons. Tremaine Edmunds would reach him in 3 or 4 seasons less than that. So I think the fact that Tremaine Edmunds' youth and the fact that he started so early and the fact that he has a chance, if he stays healthy, to pad his stat sheet over the course of more years than other athletes get a chance to, I think we can legitimately talk about Tremaine Edmunds at some point as a guy who could possibly be a Hall of Fame player. And I'm being dead serious. That's not hyperbole. I really do think that if he can stay healthy and if this Buffalo team can be successful over the next decade or so.
And I think that's the key, right? The team has to be successful. We already know the defense is one of the best, right? So that's another thing here, right? Brian Urlacher on those defenses. The guy was a 4-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler. Those Bears defenses with him and Briggs, they were really good through all those years. Now, they didn't have the most playoff success with him there, right? They made it to the one Super Bowl. They lost, but, with Cutler there and even before Cutler with Grossman, they weren't the most successful team in the postseason. Ray Lewis, on the other hand, tons of postseason success, tons of playoff victories, tons of, accolades from that standpoint, 2 Super Bowl rings. So the first step is for the Bills and Tremaine Edmunds getting into that kind of conversation is for the team to have success and for the defense to be one of the best, which they have the groundwork now and already are. So if they can continue again, now we're talking about the progression of the defense here as a whole and of the team. That's going to elevate him into that conversation potentially down the road where he's a multiple-time Pro Bowler, maybe an All-Pro and Defensive Player of the Year candidate.
Yeah, and Daniel Gowries here says if he has some big games against big teams like Kansas City, San Francisco, that could really help the cause, get some national attention on the big stage. In order to get national attention, you need to be on the big stage, and just so happens the Buffalo Bills are on the biggest on the biggest stage in football 4 times this year, 4 national games. So the Buffalo Bills are going to he's got more of a chance than Trey White got last year with the season Trey White had, because Trey White was only on the big stage, twice, Pittsburgh and Dallas. That was it.
And he made the most of it on that Pittsburgh game, right? So, and Trey White made the most of that in that game with 2 interceptions. So Edmonds and White, and honestly, everyone on the defense is going to have their chance, but Edmonds especially now, because if I'm not mistaken, in that the year before when we had the primetime game against the Pats on Monday night, I believe he got hurt in that game and didn't finish. So he missed a chance there, but you're right.
All right. Before we move on to the next topic, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna stop reading the commercial, because I think that I think the Buffalo Fanatics fan shop really, I think it sells itself. Everyone knows Buffalo Fanatics fan shop. Everyone knows the Buffalo versus everybody shirt. Bills players rock Buffalo Fanatics gear, so that's how well the Buffalo Fanatics shop is doing. So if you want to dress just like the Buffalo Bills players, if you want some of the best Bills gear in town, head over to bffanshop.com, where you'll get 10% off. If you like this show, guess what we have in like the very, very, like you scroll like 3 pages down, like this, I think it's the very last thing in the store. They got it pretty well hidden. But there are some Bills guys t-shirts, some Bills guys hoodies. They moved it up? Oh yeah, we're moving on up. We're like the Jeffersons. We're moving on up. So head over to bffanshop.com. It's already wicked affordable. I say it again. I've been saying wicked a lot lately, which I can't do because that's what people in Boston say.
I don't like that at all.
I don't either. I hate myself for saying it. But head on over. It's already crazy affordable prices. And on top of that, by using the promo code BillsGuys, BILLSGUIS, you can get yourself 10% off at the Buffalo Fanatics store. So head over to bffanshop.com. Again, that discount is 10% off. And the promo code is BillsGuys. I don't know if you could tell, but I am pretty hyped up today. I was super tired coming into the show, and all of this Bills talk has just got me pumped up right now. So let's move on to the next topic, and that is Josh Allen talking to the media. And I'll tell you what, there are, first of all, let's hold up. Where is this? Where did Silver Smasher go? I saw a pretty solid comment up here. What's up, guys? First time. Oh, wait, I think we clicked on it at the same time. First time dropping by. I like the Bills, and in this coming Super Bowl, if you had to fill in the blank, who is it? I like the Bills, and I don't know, man. NFC, give me Bills Niners, a rematch of the Monday Night Football in October.
I like Niners or Saints probably if I had to pick right now.
All right, so Drew Brees versus Josh Allen, America's 2 favorite quarterbacks. PFF's favorite quarterback and America's favorite quarterback. So we're talking about Josh Allen now, and he had some comments to the media. He talked to the media today, and there was a lot of encouraging things. I get that it's all talk at this point, but that's what the offseason is. But there was a lot of encouraging things with Josh Allen. I'm going to start with this quote from Josh Allen, and most of these I got from the Twitter feed of Ryan Talbot at New York Upstate. So give him a follow at Ryan Talbot from New York Upstate if you haven't done so already. He always does a great job during these press conferences of filling everybody in with what guys are saying. So Josh Allen said the Bills are undefeated when he has a 60% completion percentage or higher in his career. He's not going to try to be Captain Checkdown, but he's going to work on reaching that completion percentage. So it's nice that he's mindful of it. It's nice that we know that improving his completion percentage is in the back of his head. And one of the things that I think he can really do to improve his completion percentage is one of the things that you mentioned on Monday's show. And what is that?
Yeah, just use those safety valves a little bit more when, first, second, third reads aren't there. Get rid of the ball, avoid the hits, and use your running backs more in the passing game. And it doesn't have to be where you're considered a check down guy, right? This is where he's still saying he's going to be himself. He's going to play the way he wants to play and have fun. That's what he mentioned as well during the conference. But using his running backs a little bit more in the passing game, taking some easy completions, let them do the work. I mean, look, he's pretty much close to that 60% number already. I think he was 58.8 last year. So, a few more completions to running backs, and he's at that 60% mark. So use the running backs more in the passing game. Doesn't mean he has to be a check down guy. Just use them a little bit more as a safety valve. And I'd like to see a little bit more designed passing plays to running backs, aka more screens, please, from Brian Daboll. We have the guys to do it. We have the athletic offensive line to do it. Yes, we do. Devin Singletary is the guy that can do it, and we have the athletic offensive line to do it. So, look, I just feel like from a balance standpoint, mix it up a little bit. But I think use the running backs more in the passing game. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. And I think I mentioned last week, having the decoys of Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs, and John Brown run down the field is going to make those linebackers and safeties think. And I think that having them dropping back is going to be really good for our running game because Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, those are two very slippery running backs. So if they can wiggle through the first level, if the linebackers or the safeties are even further away and they got a little bit of space to juke them out, they can make something happen. And, same thing goes not just for the running game, but the passing game. I mentioned Baker Mayfield's rookie year in Cleveland. How many times would he just dump it off to Duke Johnson and let Duke Johnson do work? So I'm totally with you there. But at the same time, there was a great story that Dan Fedez of WHAM in Rochester got. He interviewed Josh Allen's college coach, Craig Bohl, about Josh Allen. Did you happen to see that interview with Craig Bohl?
I did not catch that one. No. Fill me in. You
are going to love this story. So he's interviewing Craig Bohl, Josh Allen's college coach. And he asked him for some good Josh Allen stories, some fun Josh Allen stories, something that might endear him to the fans in Buffalo. And he said, well, I got a great story for you. It happened during practices. We were practicing. It was like spring practice. And one of the plays was a designed fullback dump. Just the fullback rolls out into the flat. Josh hits him for like a 1-yard pass. See what he can do with it, like a run. It was just a simple little dump off play. And, Josh rolls out. He looks at his fullback, but then he notices his wide receiver wide open deep. So he crossed the body, whips this pass 70 yards in the air and hits his receiver for a touchdown. And Craig Bohl walked up to him after the play and he said, Josh, that was great, but the play was supposed to go to the fullback. And Josh responds, sorry, coach, Brett Favre says touchdowns first.
That's interesting you mentioned that because there was wasn't it mentioned on the thing today, or it might not have been from the conference today, but he did mention something about Brett Favre, I believe, and how he talked to him.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to get to that point, but last week we talked about how I felt like ESPN was disrespecting Josh Allen because quarterbacks like Teddy Bridgewater and Ryan Tannehill were in front of him in that 4-round mock draft they did. Well, this is the point I'm getting at here. If Josh Allen sees that big play down the field, he's going to take it, and he's going to score points. Guys like Teddy Bridgewater, guys like Ryan Tannehill, they don't even think about it. They just dump it right to that fullback. That's what they do. That's what they are just engineered and born to do. That's what those two have made their career out of doing, dumping it off to the fullback. Josh Allen isn't perfect. He tries to play hero ball way too much, but at least he's willing to make that play down the field. I don't see that from guys like Tannehill and Bridgewater. And that's one of the things that had me so upset when I saw that mock draft last week, is because Josh Allen has that big play potential that I think some of those guys don't. So I absolutely loved that story. Speaking of scoring touchdowns, another thing Josh Allen said was he says he thinks the offense is better equipped to score more points in 2020, which is great because they didn't score too many in 2019. I'm going back and I'm rewatching all the games and I'm just like, God, some of this is kind of boring. The offense was gotten a lot of stretches where they would get 1 or 2 first downs and they just stall out and end up punting. So it's nice to hear him think the offense is better equipped to score points. I think we've made this comment before. I did an entire podcast about 2 days ago in place of the NFL Basement Guys, if you want to go back to the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network and listen, just about how the addition of Stephon Diggs opens up the entire offense without Stephon Diggs even touching the ball. Just the fact that Stephon Diggs is there as a decoy to take pressure off of other guys is going to open up our offense so much. So go back and give that a listen. I highly recommend it. But he mentioned Devin Singletary and Dawson Knox going into year 2. He mentioned Beasley, Brown, and Diggs as the primary focal points of the offense. Are you surprised that any other names weren't mentioned?
No, because it's like what do we have? We have Dawson Knox going into his second year. You're talking about 3 vets, 3 really good receivers. They're the 3 best options on the team. So no, I'm not really that surprised. I think that the other guy, you can't have 4 or 5 guys that are all like getting 100 balls, right? You gotta have like 2, maybe even not even 3 guys, but 2, 3 guys maybe that are the focal point. Other guys are complementary type players who can, put in a big play here and there or be like a safety valve or whatever it is. So no, I'm not really surprised by that comment.
Yeah, I remember last year during the season, the comment, one of the comments I think I made, 150 times was I wanted to funnel the offense through 3 guys: Cole Beasley, John Brown, Devin Singletary. I mentioned it show after show. Target each of these guys 10 times. Like funnel the offense through them because these are your best players. Well, now just simply with Singletary and Knox going into year 2 and the addition of Stephon Diggs, I legitimately think you have 5. You can spread it out more. You don't need to funnel your offense through 3 guys anymore because there are so many guys. And, 1 week, I think you could see Stephon Diggs have very pedestrian numbers, like go 5 catches for like 40, 43 yards or 53 yards or 60 yards or whatever. And you put on the opposite side, you'll see a guy like Cole Beasley have like 10 catches, or you'll see Devin Singletary make like 3 big chunk plays, or Dawson Knox makes big catches, or John Brown, etc. And then the next week, the next defense is going to try to adapt to that, and you'll see Stephon Diggs go off on somebody for 10 catches and 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, because the defense has just had so much. Last year, they didn't have anything to think about. It was, all right, make sure John Brown is covered with 2 guys. Make sure you put a really good defender on Cole Beasley, and just be mindful of Devin Singletary. That was it, because Dawson Knox was so young and so new to the position and so unfocused, and Foster and all those guys just really didn't give you too much. Now there's just so much to think about.
There is, and like that's why I do caution people sometimes to like not worry so much about the statistics here, right? Like if Stephon Diggs doesn't go out there, we traded a 1st-round pick from him. If he doesn't go out there and have 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns, that's fine. Like if he, as long as he's contributing and making crucial key plays, if you see this offense spread it out a little bit more, you could see conceivably 3 guys with like 800 to 900 receiving yards, or 3 guys close to 1,000 receiving yards. The only way I see that maybe being a little bit different is if we do have a pretty significant shift in sort of philosophy and approach when it comes to letting Josh Allen loose this year, as far as like, hey, look, we're going to be the team that throws the ball 40 times a game, which that remains to be seen. We don't know if that's going to be the case, but to me, like that's where I would say it's not all about statistics here. It's about what it does for your offense and what it does for the collective group. And you have now 3 guys plus the Knoxes and Singletaries of the world to make that happen. So, that's just a cautionary tale about statistics, kind of not telling the whole picture sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean the Rockpile Report guys made a really good point on Matthew Perino's podcast last night, where they were talking about, I don't know how much you can expect from Gabe Davis, or how much you can expect from Isaiah Hodgins, or even to a degree Zach Moss, because Zay Jones only played because there was absolutely terrible receivers on this roster. It was very early in our roster development. The first chance the Buffalo Bills had to replace a guy like Robert Foster last year, they did it. Robert Foster's snaps went down significantly with the addition of Brown and Beasley. Zay Jones was quickly phased out of the offense. Would Devin Singletary had to come into camp and blow them away. I don't think they intended on playing him that much his rookie year. And even then they refused to really unleash him until later in the year. And the argument can be they didn't unleash him enough. Dawson Knox, does he even play as much as he did if Tyler Kroft doesn't get hurt? So it seems like, at least on offense, maybe the Bills don't want to play the younger guys. So now that there are all these veterans and these guys going into their second year, guys that maybe like in our minds, we want the Buffalo Bills to play a lot, like Gabe Davis and Zach Moss, maybe we're not going to see it as much as we think we are. And Sam Dubbs makes the comment here, Dable better show out with Diggs there now. And I agree with you, Sam. And this gets me to my next point of Josh Allen, who said that he sees Coach Dable, Brian Dable, as a coach first, but he's also a friend. He said their conversations are hardly ever about football. And we've seen multiple players now talk about how much they love FaceTiming Brian Dable and how much they love building relationships with Brian Dable. He says that, it was Dable that got him in contact with Peyton Manning and Brett Favre. This sort of player first attitude from Brian Dable, and sort of the structure and the culture that he's gotten to see Sean McDermott build over the last couple of years in Buffalo, if the Buffalo Bills offense does take off in 2021, as Sam hopes it is, I think that we could be looking for a new offensive coordinator in 2021 because I think Brian Daboll will be a head coach somewhere. He's probably going to take someone in the front office with him.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things that we discussed last year was the philosophy of Brian Daboll, the play calling, the sequencing, whatever, versus the execution of the offense, right? So now it's ramped up even more this year, right? Because the expectations are even higher. But at the end of the day, if Brian Daboll has a successful year, he's the one that's gone, right? I mean, he's going to be getting head coaching opportunities. If he puts Josh Allen in his third year in a position where maybe Josh Allen has a Pro Bowl caliber season, the Bills make the playoffs, they get a home playoff game, they win the division, for all the hate that Josh Allen gets, that we know he gets from like media and the analysts alike, people are going to then look at Brian Daboll and say, like, look what he did with Josh Allen, still maybe have that negative kind of air towards Josh Allen, but give the benefit of the doubt to Brian Daboll, and he could be looking at a head coaching opportunity in 2021. So I think that it has to be a big year for Brian Daboll. Like, if he doesn't kind of show out like the comment, suggested, then maybe we're looking for a different offensive coordinator anyway. I'm not going to jump ahead too much there, but the other thing about it is like the relationship with the players, right? With the players having a lot more involvement and a lot more say and a lot more sort of like it's less hierarchical, I would say, when it comes to player coaches than it used to be probably in the NFL. Then that's something that works in Daboll's favor in this case with how he's approaching the players, because the players like that. And if that's the case, they're going to buy into what he's saying, even if maybe he hasn't had the best track record in the past.
Yeah, I mean, Chris makes the comment here. I think Daboll has his weapons now. I mean, he does. There's no excuse. Just like there's no more excuses for Josh Allen. There's no more excuses. Whoops, apologize there. There's no more excuses for Brian Daboll as well. That leads me to another thing, because like this whole idea of Brian Daboll leaving to be a head coach in 2021, I think you also need to realistically look at the climate of the National Football League right now and think to yourself, next hiring season, there's going to be an onus on the National Football League and on the owners of teams with vacancies to fill those vacancies with African-American candidates. And I mean, what better African-American candidates are there than right here, as Steven is saying, Leslie Frazier. So, I mean, we could honestly, if the Buffalo Bills reach their peak, reach their ceiling next season, and go and win 11, 12 games in that schedule and go win a playoff game or two, and Josh Allen has the caliber of season that we've mentioned, and Tremaine Edmunds has the caliber of season that we mentioned, we could be looking at Brian Daboll gone, we could be looking at Leslie Frazier gone, and we could be looking at these two guys gutting our front office, taking guys with them, because one of the more popular things you're seeing nowadays is hiring the head coach first and then bringing in a guy second. So whether it's Joe Shane, whether it is I'm blanking on some of the other names, but
Dan Morgan.
Dan Morgan, and there's another name that that's pretty highly respected in that front office that I'm blanking on. There are a couple of names that could be booking out with these guys if the Buffalo Bills meet their potential in 2020. All the more reason why we just need to go YOLO in 2020, because either we lose and they're fired, or we win and they go. And either way, they're probably going to be gone. So might as well do it while winning. I
mean, I love me some Leslie Frazier, man. I mean, you watch his interview that he had with the media last week. He just brings such a calming, presence to the entire team, and he's just such a huge asset to that team. McDermott obviously has the defensive background, but it's like McDermott has to realize, and which I think he did more of last year, is that he's running the entire football team now. And to have a guy like Leslie Frazier that he can trust his defense to, I'm surprised Leslie Frazier wasn't gone after last season, to be honest with you. The Bills were one of the best defenses in the league for the last 2 years, and he is going to be Brian Daboll. We'll see whether or not he gets a chance at a head coaching opportunity. There were obviously some murmurs of him this past offseason, but Leslie Frazier is going to be
I mean,
a head coach again in this league, whether it's next year or the year after. He's going to get another chance, and he deserves it.
I mean, why would Leslie Frazier have gotten a job the last 2 years with such highly qualified candidates as Zach Taylor out there? I don't.
Well, that's because people are like wanting to hire anybody who even had any kind of remote connection to Sean McVay, which obviously now doesn't look so hot. I mean, the Rams weren't that great last year. Whatever, separate conversation.
Chris Janicki with a great comment here. If we lose Frazier, it'll be a seamless transition to Eric Washington as DC. I can see exactly where you're coming from. I mean, that guy was the DC in Carolina last year under Ron Rivera. The one thing I would say about Eric Washington is he wasn't so great as a defensive coordinator in Carolina last year. I believe Rivera took play calling duties away, but Carolina had ran a 43 there forever, and it seemed like just recently had switched over to a 34, so that might have something to do with it. Steve Wilkes, the former DC in Carolina, who became Arizona's head coach and then was the DC in Cleveland, is out of a job right now, out of the NFL right now, taking a Jim Schwartzian type of break. So he's a name to keep an eye out on if Leslie Frazier books. And from what I've heard from a couple of people is the younger Babich, Bobby Babich. I don't think he's a junior. I think it's Bob Babich and Bobby Babich. But our safeties coach, from what I've heard from people, is he's a rising star in the National Football League, and he's a pretty hot name. So maybe Sean McDermott goes young, and a guy like Bobby Babich could, at least with Sean McDermott's mentorship and a veteran coaching staff like his father, Bob, and a guy like Eric Washington, maybe he gets the call up to beat DC if Leslie Frazier leaves. But that is a far, far away conversation, I think, to be having right now. All right.
Yep.
A couple more
to answer Steven's question really quick, Frazier coached he was the head coach of the Vikings for a short stint, to answer Steven's question in there.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk about here is Josh Allen and some guys he's been talking to this offseason. He's talked with Tony Romo at the Super Bowl. Obviously, Brian Daboll arranged and set up that meeting with Peyton Manning and Brett Favre. Josh Allen says that the Florida was his best throwing session he's ever had in his career. And he says that they were running actual plays from the playbook. They weren't just tossing a football around. So all of these things are really inspiring things that make me hopeful and positive heading into the year 2020 in this sort of shortened offseason. It seems like Josh Allen really gets it and is ready to take that next step.
Yeah, and how about the things they were talking about where like Josh Allen was saying he was getting a play called in from Daboll on these like virtual meetings, and he would have to call in the play to the rest of the guys. Like I found that quite interesting too, right? It seems like they're really trying to get creative with how they kind of get the playbook down, integrate some of the new guys like Diggs, but you can tell that it seems like this team is on a mission, or at least, from what we can piece together, the team's on a mission. You talked about how Josh Allen said, like, he's still disappointed with the playoff loss. He's still thinking about it. Like, this team's going to be motivated. Whether or not they live up to the expectations, we'll see. But there's not going to be a question of motivation or feeling of like just because they made the playoffs last year that they're going to be happy with that. This team and Josh Allen specifically has his sights set higher, which is great.
Yeah, and last but not least, he made some comments on Stefon Diggs. He called him a hard worker. He said he was helpful to teammates. He said he was all about the team. He says a presence like him is needed in the locker room. And I think this goes back to a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. We talked about Stefon Diggs, finger quotes, diva mentality. It's not a diva mentality. He just knows that he's the best player on the football field. He knows exactly how good he is, and he knows what he can do with the ball in his hands, so he wants the ball in his hands. I mean, you can call that a diva if you want, but I just call it confidence. And he's not selfish. I mean, there really are no off-the-field concerns, like outside of the football field with Stefon Diggs. I mean, this guy, I think, brings an edge and a confidence to this locker room that I think maybe might have been lacking. And for him to bring that to this receiving core, for him to bring that to this offense, for him to bring this to this locker room in general, I think it's going to be huge for us.
It is going to be. And like I think that's a great point about the edge that he's going to bring, because like John Brown is not that guy, right? I mean, we all love the John Brown dancing touchdown celebration type thing, but he's not even the guy that gets up even after he makes a big play and really does anything, which is totally fine, right? Sometimes you need that, right? You need a guy that's kind of got that cool demeanor. Cole Beasley has a little bit more of that edge to him probably than John Brown does, but now with bringing Stefon Diggs, a true number one, a guy that can be a number one and that will realize that like this, from his standpoint, like this team traded for me, the Vikings traded me away. He's going to have motivation to prove that the trade was worth it for the Bills. He's going to want to prove the Vikings like, so whatever his motivations are, work ethic, like I'm not questioning any of it. Like he's shown everything that I would have hoped for. And to be honest with you, like I think everything that he did last year sort of on the sidelines seems to now just be completely overblown. I mean, like what you see him doing, his actions now with the team coming in, it leads me to believe that we're not going to have any problems with Stephon Diggs as far as like personality wise. I'm really happy about that.
All right. Before we move on, ladies and gentlemen, if you are looking for an escape, if you're a Twitter person like myself and you're looking for an escape, there's just too much politics on your feed these days. It's an election year, 2020. Register to vote and vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but register to vote and vote. It's important. That's my PSA for the day. But if you're looking to get away from that stuff on Twitter, head over to Flick Chat. Go to the Google Play Store, go to the Apple App Store, download the Flick Chat app, and then go to chatwithbf.com and join the Buffalo Fanatics community within Flick Chat. We're over 1,000 people now. It's all Bills fan. It's all Bills talk. I like to tell people it's like those old school Bills message board where there's separate channels with separate topics. All of the founders of Buffalo Fanatics like Rico and Pierre and all of them are there. They're having conversations. There's phone wallpapers, so you got that little Instagram vibe to it. I mean, just you can listen to our podcasts on there. It is just a place to be if you're a Bills fan. So head over to chatwithbf.com, download that Flick Chat app, and join the Buffalo Fanatics channel. You will not regret it. It is a great time with fellow fanatics like yourself. All right. It is that time, Dave. It is that time.
Love it.
We are opening up the rest of the show, ladies and gentlemen, to you guys, the viewers. Hit us up in that comment section with your takes, with your topics, with your questions. Remember, please remember this. Super chatters are appreciated. All that money goes right back into Fanatics, helps us pay for all these fancy backdrops and logos, and helps us keep the lights on here at Buffalo Fanatics. So super chatters get priority. If you are so kind as to throw $1 or $2 our way, you will get the priority and you'll be first in line. Your topics, your takes, your questions will be heard and answered. So if you want to become a super chatter, head over to YouTube and become a super chatter. It is greatly appreciated. But until we get some super chats, we will take the pro bono questions. We'll start with Matt Hernandez. What does Matt have to say?
So Matt, this is a very interesting question, and there's some good chatter going on in the comments section about this question right now. So Josh Allen, 2020, over under 35 total touchdowns. So obviously including passing and rushing TDs, or maybe even a receiving TD in there, like we saw in the playoff game. So where do you come out on this? I'm gonna let you go first here because I have an idea.
I want to look something up real quick, but I'll talk while I look it up. I mean, we're talking a combined total, right? So we're talking through the air and through the ground. And I think one of the things that Stephon Diggs, again, being a sort of just the presence of him on the field, is the fact that DBs and safeties, they're going to start turning their backs and they're going to start dropping back into coverage. And they're going to be more worried about the receivers and coverage than they are the quarterback. So strictly speaking, we could see Josh Allen with double-digit rushing touchdowns this year. I'm trying to look up right now real quick the touchdown total for Cam Newton in his MVP season. I feel like I've been looking at these stats all the time. Okay, that season he had 35 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns. So that's 45. I mean, that's crazy. I thought he had 35 total. He had 45. It was 35 through the air. I love Josh Allen. I don't think we're going to see 35 touchdowns in the air. I just don't. If he can put up a season where he throws 25 to 28 touchdowns in the air, and how many touchdowns did he have last year? Do you know off the top of your head?
So he passed for 20 and ran for 9.
Okay.
Last year. So
if he can throw 5 more touchdowns this year and run for 3 more touchdowns this year, give me 25 and 12, I'll take it. I will take it, especially if I think guys like Devin Singletary and Zach Moss can put the ball in on the ground more often this year as well.
Yeah, well, and also at the goal line, we saw that the Bills aren't afraid to use Josh Allen, much like the Panthers use Cam Newton at the goal line, where they just kind of have him just jump over the pile and get those kind of, I don't want to call them cheap rushing touchdowns because no touchdowns easy, But you talk about him having 29 total touchdowns last year, an increase of 6 to this year. I think that's realistic. Now, what combination that amounts to, I don't know. Would he maybe have a few fewer rushing touchdowns this year and more passing? I think that's possible. 9 rushing touchdowns is a lot. So, if he puts up somewhere like 6 to 7 rushing TDs and has, 27-ish passing TDs, you could see him come right around that number. But if I had to bet right now on the over-under, I would just say slightly under on the total.
How many rushing touchdowns did Josh Allen have his rookie season? I'm gonna look.
I think 8. He had 8 his rookie year and 9 last year.
So he's closing in on the double-digit mark every year. So I think it's safe to assume Josh Allen is gonna rush somewhere between 7 and 10 touchdowns next year. I think that's safe to assume. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 6. Maybe between 6 and 8. Maybe between 6 and 10. So then you got to ask yourself: is the addition of Stefon Diggs good enough for like 6 more touchdowns, 7 more touchdowns? Not just from him, but from opening other people up. I think so. I mean, I think Josh can get to 25 this year if he stays healthy. So if he can get up to 25, can he run for 10? So 35 is such a tricky number. But I feel confident taking the over. I feel pretty confident taking the over.
Okay. I mean, it's a good number.
I'm not going to bet money on it, but
it's a good number. I think 35 is like a good number to set the line at. We'll get back to Davion in just a second because we just got a super chatter in. Jeffrey Green.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate it.
So, Jeffrey, thanks so much. We're going to put you right to the front of the list here. He says, I need Josh Allen. I will be there an MVP candidate either this year or next year. I wish Pierre was on tonight because he'd be blowing up the comments with supporting your chant for him as an MVP candidate. So what I'll say here, MVP candidate, I think the quick answer is yes, he could be an MVP candidate. Do I think he has a really great chance to win the MVP? Probably not. With just because we talked about guys like Mahomes and Lamar being probably just statistically going to just have better numbers than him just based on their teams and what they've done. But as a candidate, I think he could be an MVP candidate if he has like that Cam Newton type year that you mentioned. He probably doesn't even need to have that good of a year. If he has close to 30 passing TDs and 10 rushing TDs and the Bills win their division, then he should be an MVP candidate.
Yeah, I'll say this, Jeffrey. I'm not as confident as a guy like Pierre in 2020, not because I don't think Josh Allen has it in him, not because I don't think he's got the weapons to do it. He's got the weapons to do it. If he takes the next step, he takes the next step. But the things that I'm concerned about, first of all, Lamar Jackson is the reigning MVP in the National Football League. Analytically speaking, he has the easiest schedule. The Baltimore Ravens have the easiest schedule in the National Football League next year. The Buffalo Bills have the fifth toughest. They have to go back and forth, zipping back and forth across the country 4 times. They play multiple good defenses. They're playing 4 games in prime time. This is a schedule that the Buffalo Bills aren't used to. This is a schedule that Josh Allen isn't used to. I'm not saying that he can't overcome all of these things, but the cards are stacked against him. I'm not saying the cards are stacked against the Buffalo Bills to make the playoffs. I'm not saying the cards are stacked against the Buffalo Bills to win the AFC East. I just think it's going to really be tough to put up statistics when you have different practice schedules this year. You're doing more traveling this year. You're playing more games in prime time. You have a tougher – I just don't think it's going to happen. I think he can take the next step as a quarterback, but I think if we're looking for it, I think the key part of your question there is next year. I haven't had a chance to look at the 2021 schedule, but I'm guessing it's probably going to be a hell of a lot easier than the 2020 schedule. So if I had to put any money on it, I don't picture us losing that many players on offense. Maybe Deion Dawkins would be the only player I think I can foresee us losing on offense. Tyler Kroft. So I would put my money on 2021 before I put my money on 2020. But for those people who are saying they think he can be an MVP candidate, I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're wrong for thinking that. I think that there are plenty of things you could tell me that are proof that it could happen.
And I think that Jeffrey's comment and some of the reasonings for what you just said lead perfectly into Davion's question here. Do you think it's possible we underachieve with all the hype? I don't know. The hype, yes, but like to me, the underachievement will come with more from the schedule, to be honest with you. the expectations are high. There's a lot of pressure on this team this year. There's a lot of pressure on Josh Allen. The hype's great and like the expectations are great, but like you got to go win these tough games. You got to go to the West Coast four times.
Yep.
4 times. And you only get back-to-back home games once the entire year. So last year, the Bills had the luxury of kind of overachieving, in my opinion, right? They were maybe a year ahead of where many people thought they were going to be last year by winning those 10 games. So they kind of snuck under the radar. They had an easy schedule last year. And so I think this is a valid question. It's certainly possibly underachieved. Now, it gets back to what you said, Steve. We could still win the division by winning 9 games.
Yep.
And to me is still a more successful season, at least right off the bat, than what it was last year, because you gave yourself a home playoff game. If you lose a home playoff game, then that's tough. But winning the division, to me, even if it's less than 10 wins, I think is the goal.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear here. Like, I'm going to make this statement. Call it a bold statement, call it whatever you want. But if the Buffalo Bills don't win the division and win a playoff game this year, they've underachieved. If the Bills win the division this year, if the Bills win 11 games this year and lose in the first round of the playoffs, they have underachieved, in my opinion. You got to get to the playoffs. You got to win a Brady-less division. You got to win it. A division where you still have a rookie quarterback on the other side, in Tua possibly, or an aging vet in Fitzpatrick, or Sam Darnold and the Jets, who have absolutely no one at cornerback. If we can't win this division now, when are we ever going to win the division? But just as you said, the only you could still win 9 games this year, win the division, get to the playoffs, have a home playoff game, win that playoff game, have less wins than you did last year, but still be as successful or more successful. The only I think amendment or exception I'll make to the rule is if the Bills just have a tough season because of how tough the schedule is and slip into the playoffs as a wild card team, but win a playoff game, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that.
Winning the playoff game solves all, honestly. It really does. Jeffrey coming strong again with another donation. He wants us to talk about the defense. Wants us to talk about the defense a little bit. Yeah. And actually, you know what, Jeffrey, we'll talk about that because I think you even Jeffrey is coming strong. He made another donation. It says, I think McDermott will win the coach of the year. He should have won it last year, I feel like. So let's talk about those two maybe combined, the defense and McDermott as a coach of the year candidate in 2020. There were some, he did get some discussion last year, right? There were he wasn't completely dismissed. There were some people that kind of talked about it, but it was always going to be an uphill battle with what Kyle Shanahan did, with what Harbaugh did, and Andy Reid, obviously. So there was a lot of stiff competition last year, and I think it's going to be more of the same this year. But if the Bills overcome a tough schedule, win double-digit games, and Josh Allen has Pro Bowl caliber season, and the defense is still elite, McDermott will and should be on the short list for Coach of the Year in 2020. If the Bills do win the division and reach double-digit wins, I think that he will be in strong consideration given how tough the schedule is for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I think he'll need 2 things if he wants to win Coach of the Year. I think he'll need double-digit wins. I can't we talk about how we could win the division with 9 wins and make the playoffs. I don't think a 9-win coach is going to win Coach of the Year.
No.
I think we'll have to win the division, and we'll have to have double-digit wins. And I think we'll have to. Do they count what you do in the playoffs when they're considering Coach of the Year? Okay, so that doesn't really matter. So I think
regular season award. Dick Duran won Coach of the Year, so there you go. When he was with the Bears, so
yeah,
definitely a regular season award.
So I think Dick Duran was 13-3 that year. So
he was. Credit, they were dirty that year.
A blind squirrel in every once in a while, but. All right. So, back to Jeffrey's point. I think McDermott's going to need those 2 things, 10 wins and the division. And I think if we get there, I think the offense is going to score points this year, but the defense is going to be the key as always. I mean, the defense is always going to drive this team. I don't think we need to be as elite as we were last year, though. Imagine if we can score one more touchdown a game than we did last year. I don't have the number in front of me. I don't know how many points a game we scored last year, but my guess is it's somewhere between 17 and 20.
I think we were right around 19 points a game as a team last year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
So imagine if we can get the number up to 21 or 22. How many times did I say last year, all our offense needs to do is score 3 damn touchdowns and we win this football game? All we got to do, 21 points and we win the game. That's all you have to do. And how many times did we barely squeak by because a team missed a field goal? I think we won 2 games this past season. The Titans game and the Jets game. Not because we earned it. I mean, our defense did. But because the other team missed field goals. So if our offense can put up 21 to 24 points a game, our defense will be just fine.
24 is a great number. 24 is a great target because let's not forget, like, the defense is going to be going up against tougher competition too this year, right? So if they allow a few more points a game, the offense is going to have to make that up. So 24 points a game should, with this defense still being elite, get you in a winnable situation almost every week.
Yeah. Jeffrey with another super chat donation. Jeffrey, I appreciate it. You are a benefactor tonight, and you are driving this conversation. If anyone wants to get on the conversation, gonna have to show up Jeffrey here because he is balling out. He's making it rain here on the Bills guys tonight. But he says, "Why don't we get enough respect?" I mean, I think it's pretty simple, right? I think at the end of the day, it comes down to market size. And I had this conversation on my solo pod yesterday when somebody asked me about stadium plans, and the big market owners run this league, the Robert Krafts, the Jerry Joneses, the people with the money, the people with the markets, the people with the super boxes and the super suites and the palaces. They run this league. And some of them are by running the league, they run the networks, which pay the league tons and tons of money. So the last thing they ever want to do is piss off their golden goose, which is the National Football League. So in order to not piss off the golden goose, you don't piss off the people in power. And the people in power, it's not Roger Goodell. It's Dan Snyder. It's Jerry Jones. It's Robert Kraft. It is these owners. It's Stan Kroenke. It's these owners with money. So these owners from these big markets. So at the end of the day, we don't get enough respect because of our market size, plain and simple. Yep. And I think another part of it has to do with the fact that we lost 4 straight Super Bowls. So it's really easy to make us a punching line, and we went on a 20-year drought. So that doesn't help matters either.
It doesn't help matters, and you gotta take a look at some of the other teams that are in small markets. They have to have like elite superstars or elite personalities to kind of bring themselves out of that. Like you look at the Chiefs, right? The Kansas City's not the biggest market, but they do have a history. They won a Super Bowl in the past. They won last year. They have Patrick Mahomes, arguably the best player in the NFL. They have Andy Reid, who's a well-respected, sort of well-known coach around the league. They have Travis Kelce, who's had his own TV show. So like, small market teams, they, players and coaches kind of have to stand out. And it's not a knock on this team right now, but like, we don't really have like the one standout guy that's like, that could be Josh Allen. That could be maybe Tremaine Edmunds if he's a little more vocal. Tre'Davious White is obviously fits that mold, but again, he's a corner, so he's not going to necessarily always get that type of attention. And the Bills they're in one of the smallest markets in the league. So we just are going to have to do it on the field with winning. And then that's going to solve for some of that, I think.
Yeah. Chris says, I'm from Toronto. I can tell you there's a very, very big Bills fan base here, Chris. I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, there's a big Bills fan base all around the country. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm pretty sure there's more Bills fans in the state of Arizona than there are Cardinals fans. Like legitimately every year. It was canceled this year because of COVID, but every year, Memorial Day weekend, there's literally a Buffalo Bills camp out in northern Arizona, an hour from my house, where like 80, 90 Bills fans close out a campground and they have Bills alumni show up and they just party for 3 days. Like in Arizona, I've been to the San Diego Bills backers bar where you wouldn't have seen a Chargers fan even when the Chargers were in town. Like it was legitimate. Like they shut down an entire bar. There was 3,000 people there. Like they close off a street every Sunday for the Buffalo Bills in San Diego, California. LA, same thing. New York, they got those crazy things at McFadden. Orlando's got one of the biggest Bills backers bars, like Colorado, Nashville, you name it. We take over cities. The fan base is real. The fan base is phenomenal, which is why I don't understand. Maybe networks like ESPN are just so big they don't give a damn. But I know NFL Network, which is trying to grow its brand, people on Good Morning Football show a lot of respect to the Buffalo Bills and a lot of respect to those smaller markets, because I think they know that people are just kind of sick of hearing about the Dallas Cowboys. I think recently First Take has switched time slots. Skip and Shannon are struggling. And things like Good Morning Football are getting a lot of attention because it's not just Cowboys. It is, they're actually talking about other teams, and they actually have real knowledge about other teams. They don't think Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson are still on our roster.
Yeah. And look, I mean, yes, ESPN, we've talked about how they don't respect us, but look, the NFL appears to be giving us the chance to earn that respect and show that we're for real by giving us the 4 primetime games in 2020. So now it's like, we're giving you these primetime games. You were a good team last year. You made the playoffs. We know your fan base is great, so we're going to give you these games. Now you got to go show the rest of the league and show us that you deserve to be in those slots. So I think we'll end it on Jeffrey here. Again, this guy's killing it tonight.
Yeah, Jeffrey, we appreciate it, man.
Do you think Steve Tasker gets in the Hall of Fame? I'm a big Bills fan. Go Bills. Ooh. I don't think he does, Jeffrey. Yeah. I unfortunately don't see it happening. Like, it's super rare for like pure special team guys like this that aren't like kickers or punters to kind of make the Hall of Fame. We've seen guys like this make the Pro Bowl, like the Matthew Slaters of the world, or the Steve Taskers of the world, but it's just really difficult for these types of guys to make the Hall of Fame. So while he would certainly have my vote, I just don't think he's going to get in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think how many actually straight up special teams players are in the Hall of Fame. Are there even any, like, is Ray Guy in the Hall of Fame? Are there even any kickers and punters?
Yeah, Ray Guy's in. He was a kicker and punter, though, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sure Vinatieri, like Vinatieri will get in. But
yeah, kickers and punters, yes.
Yeah.
But like guys that just are like gunners or like play special teams, like outside of like the guys that show up on your like depth chart as the PK or the P, right? They're like, he's not going to make it, I don't think. Hate to be a downer.
It's Alan said, just had to click in and say how he can. I think he's talking about Steve Tasker making the Hall of Fame. I'm with you. I don't see it. I think Matthew Slater probably has just as big of a resume and just as big of a bid to be in the Hall of Fame as a guy like Steve Tasker. I think maybe Steve Tasker. Steve Tasker got more pub during those Hall of Fame years than Matthew Slater has ever gotten during New England's Hall of Fame run, or New England's Hall of Fame run, New England Super Bowl runs. But I just don't see it, Jeffrey. But as much as I agree with Dave, I think he should be. I think it's about time the Gunners get some respect and then get Reed Ferguson in there as a long snapper. But maybe we'll create our own special teams Hall of Fame. So, all right, I think that just about does it. Unless anyone wants to chime in the next minute or so as we close out the show with a super chat, I think we're going to close it out for this evening. Jeffrey, want to thank you. You are
the show, Jeffrey.
Our benefactor tonight. We appreciate all your donations. Anyone else out there? We know money's tight and all of these things, but we always do appreciate the super chats. And like we said, we hook our super chatters up. Next show, we're doing a giveaway. So I take it back. Let's stay on for about 2 more minutes because next show we're doing a giveaway. So if you tune in on Monday, we're giving away anything you want in the Buffalo Fanatics store. You get one purchase in the Buffalo Fanatics store on us. Everyone who has super chatted thus far will be in the drawing to win. So if you get a super chat in here in the next 2 minutes, you will be in the running to win a anything you want from the Buffalo Fanatics store. So as we close out the show here, anyone who throws in a super chat in this next minute or so here, they will have a chance. Corey, you super chatted before, so you already got a shot. Steven, my man, you've already super chatted before, so I know you got a shot for that shirt as well. Anyone who's got their name down there at the bottom line, plus Jeffrey here, has got a shot for a shirt next week. We thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. The next time we talk to you, I believe it'll be into the 50s in terms of days to Bills football. And Dried Ocean here. I'm really enjoying you guys' weekly program. Thank you, Dried Ocean. I appreciate it. Every week you really bring it with the comments, man. You made a comment earlier that I didn't get a chance to get to, where you were talking about how the Bills offense was constantly stalling out at like the 40-yard line. And I don't know if you were listening to our show last season.
Beat that to death.
We beat that to death. That was my thing every week was like, God damn it. Once you get past the 50-yard line, do something. I literally was at the point where I'm like, when you get past the 50, stop throwing it. Just run. Just run. Just run the football. Set up every 3rd and 1 you can just so you can pick up another first down. Because we couldn't pick up a first down to save our lives. Once we got past that 50-yard line, it seemed like last year. So, Dried Ocean, I'm with you. You bring it every week in the comment section. Corey Buffalo, you bring it. There's a ton of you in here that bring it every week.
Steven brings it.
So,
I mean, everybody's doing really. I mean, the comments section is great because it's great because like when you guys ask the questions or make the comments and we see the conversation going back and forth in the comments section, it's really interesting to us, and then we can like pull it up here and continue to talk about it. So keep that up. We really appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. So that should do it for today's show. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that CNBC show Mad Money, where Jim Cramer is just sweating and screaming. I felt like that was me today because I was just so amped up, and I'm like, you can't tell because the light is shining on my face, but I am just sweating bullets today. I feel like Jim Cramer from Mad Money. I need to find a bell I can ding every time I give a take or something. So thank you guys so much.
Sean Miller up there in Arizona. That's you.
Oh, no. That's Tucson. That is Tucson. I am a Bobby Hurley guy, former UV Bull. I am Herm Edwards all the way. Sun Devil.
You're Sun Devil. Okay.
Forks up. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, go Bills.
Go Bills.